Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another playoff series preview here at the Hockey Writers. This one, we're going to do the Florida Panthers and the Washington Capitals. Again, another series that just got finalized yesterday. It seems like they all did, except for the Oilers and Kings and maybe the Wild and the Blues, but they still were dealing with home ice. So there was a lot that had to be determined on the last day of the second to last day, if you count that Seattle Kraken game that'll end up being tomorrow. But we're here. So here's another series preview. I'm joined in by Ted Starkey, who covers the Washington Capitals, and also Joey Ganzi from Florida Panthers. So they both cover those teams, and we're going to do a bit of a series preview like we've done on a few of these that have already come out on YouTube. So we're going to dive in here. Just to set this up a bit, the Panthers won the season series 2-1 in the 3 games that were played this season. Panthers were 3 for 10 on the power play. Capitals were 1 for 7. The scoring was pretty even though, 13-12. Panthers outscored them in that season series. So in those stats, they're pretty even. But let's look at a couple matchups to start here. Obviously, the first one is Alex Ovechkin on the Capitals against. There's a tandem of guys that could be on the Panthers. You've got Barkov. Huberdeau. Let's go with Huberdeau because he's been the massive point getter this year. So we'll do Ovechkin versus Huberdeau. These are two of the best, probably the best players in the league this year. Start with you, Ted. What do you think this matchup will be for Ovechkin? He's been kept out of games going down the stretch here. Maybe injury, maybe load management. We don't know. But what do you think this matchup could be like?
I think it's a matchup that Ovechkin would like. He did pretty well against the Panthers this year. He scored 1 goal in the first meeting of the season, and he got a hat trick in the 1 game in Washington. So the Panthers will give him a little bit of room to skate and score, and he's going to like that. I think, he actually had an injury scare last Sunday against Toronto, but he should be ready to go. The question is how he'll be able to shoot. But I think against a tight checking team, he usually struggles a little bit, but I would expect this series would be very entertaining and a lot of open ice, which I think will be to his liking.
For sure. It should be a wide open series, I think. There's a lot of offense to be had on both sides. Joey, what do you think? Panthers have a lot of weapons. You look at Barkov, Huberdeau, to go down the line here. There's Reinhart on the third line. They're just, you go down the list. There's a lot of threats. What do you think this matchup will be like against the Capitals?
I think they could probably put them on their heels for sure. That, like you said before, they have easily a line A, B, and C, or 1A, 1B, 1A, 1B, and C. But I think it's going to come down really for mental toughness. You do have some big stars that did perform well that are entering their first or second playoff series, like Duclair is going into his second career playoff series. Sam Reinhart, despite many years in Buffalo, has never played a playoff game until Tuesday night. So it's all going to come down to see if they can handle the atmosphere. And I think they can. They do have a lot of players on their core with not even just so much, with their younger stars, but they have Giroux and Sherrod and people who have been through the thick and thin of it all. So I think that's going to help them elevate their game a little bit more and help them settle down into the series. But ultimately, it's going to come down to mental toughness.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the offense on both sides, you could probably say they match up pretty good, especially their top 6, I think. But it's going to come down to that ridiculous third line with Sam Reinhart. And it's insane of what they've done. Mason Marchment has been really good this year too. So let's go to that overall offense. Like we did some matchup with the superstars, but overall, Ted, what do you think? We've gone through Capitals seasons where they've dominated in that case, where they've had a really deep offense and, run through teams. What do you think this matchup will be like? I know before recording, we're talking about that. Maybe they're like the Florida Panthers are like the Washington Capitals of that past.
I mean, I think they're set up very similarly. I think, you saw a lot of the Caps teams before they won the Cup in 2018. They had a lot of offense, very deep offensively, and put up a lot of goals. I think this year's edition, they've had some key injuries throughout the year. They're relatively healthy. Backstrom was out for long stretches. TJ Oshie has been hit or miss. But they're relatively healthy. And, I was indicating with Ovechkin, I think this type of series is probably to give them a lot of room. We saw, in the 3 matchups, the Capitals blew a big lead in one of the games. The Panthers blew a big lead in one of the games. And obviously the Panthers have had a steady diet of coming back from back in games. And we've seen that in the past for the Capitals too. So I think it should be a really fun series. I think the Capitals, I don't think they're quite as deep offensively as Florida is now. But I do think they are probably better overall than they've been in the regular season, just because I think they're a little bit healthier. Back still not 100%, but they're a pretty solid four lines. One of the big injuries they had was Carl Hagelin's out, a good special teams player, but Larson came in from Phoenix and has done pretty well in his spot. But, they don't match up quite with the Panthers, but they're pretty good on their own.
For sure. Joey, I want to ask you this one. Ted mentioned the comebacks. I mean, they've been coming back a lot. I mean, they have the offense to do it, but is that something that could come back and bite them if they do that? Because it's not something that you want to be doing, having to come back in every game, even though you can. Do you think that's going to be a factor in this series or not?
I believe so, but at the same time, with the way the playoffs are, I don't really see too many situations coming where they would have to come back from 4 or 5 goals down. A lot of teams typically clamp it down late in games like that. But the offense does have enough, I believe, to get easily 4 or 5 goals a night, as they've done in the regular season.
Well, they broke records in that case, so it's they've been doing a lot of that this year. They lead the league in scoring for a reason. So. Let's go to the defense. This is the group they're going to have to stop these high-powered offenses. Starting with, let's start with the Capitals on defense. They got John Carlson still leading the way back there. How do you think that they match up against this offense that they're going to have to go against in potentially a 7-game series?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they carry decent speed, which you're going to need in a series against Florida. I think Carlson obviously has some wheels. Orlov has some wheels. They're not quite as deep as they have been in years past, obviously with the cap issues, but they're a pretty decent defensive core. Obviously they're gonna have their hands full with this, but at times they've been able to shut down teams, especially on the road. Obviously Florida is a kind of a different animal, but they had a nice game a couple weeks ago at Colorado when they became the only Eastern team to win a game out there. And they largely limited the Avalanche to perimeter shots and kept them at bay. So, but it's going to be a tough 7-game series for them. I mean, if they got to deal with the speed and deal with the offensive talent the Panthers have, but they're not a bad bunch. They're not what they used to be, but they're certainly capable of shutting teams down over a short stretch of time.
Yeah, I mean, they finished with 100 points, so it's not like they're or 101 points, I believe. So I mean, yeah, they're not like no slugs there, but Joey, I mean. Florida added some good pieces. Like you mentioned Sherratt already. Aaron Ekblad's having a ridiculous season on his own. What do you think this defense can do? And not just defensively, but offensively throughout this series?
They absolutely have the ability to just jump up on the rush and make some magic happen. They're one of the best teams on the rush. I think they lead the league in goals on the rush, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. But even then, I think when Aaron Ekblad is supposed to be back for game 1. So I think with him coming back, it's going to sell everything out. You also have arguably one of the most underrated defensemen, Mackenzie Weegar, who's willing, he led the league in block shots, I think, this year. And I think they'll be able to manage to settle it down and be able to limit the scoring chance and keep them more on the perimeter. They do have to work on the penalty kill, though, a little bit. It was 16th in the NHL at the end of the season, but I think if they can all come together, and once they're 100% healthy and they go in with the full deck of cards, they should be able to cut off a lot of scoring chances and sell everyone down defensively and give their goaltender some help.
Yeah, I mean, one guy he was a Canucks draft pick way back when, Gustav Forsling. He's had an amazing season. I wish he was on the Canucks right now, but yeah, well, I digress. Looking at, let's go to the goaltending now. So, I mean, Luck Bobrovsky in Florida. In Washington, it's been a tandem. Ted, I just edited an article of yours talking about the goaltending, and what do you think that'll happen? Will that be a factor in this series and not knowing what goaltender you're going to go with?
I think that's the factor for Washington. I just think their goaltending has been horribly inconsistent all year long. Both goaltenders have looked really good at times, and both goals have looked horrendous at times. Samsonov was great in November. He really has not come back from playing that well the rest of the year. Vanecek was great in March, but he's kind of tailed off the last couple of weeks, and it's really, I think it's going to make or break the Capitals. They didn't go out and get any kind of insurance or any kind of thing, and you're really taking a huge risk. Last year against Boston, Vanecek went out in game 1 with an injury. Samsonov was okay, but he made a huge gaffe in game 3, and that cost the Capitals a series. Now, if your Capitals just would need, decent goaltending, but I'm not even sure they can guarantee that. They're certainly, Samsonov has a more of a range. He can be really spectacular, but he can be spectacularly awful. Vanecek's a little bit more consistent, but he's not going to make the goals. He's not going to make the saves that Samsonov can. So I would expect Vanecek will be the starter. Whether he comes out if they have a bad game, that's left to be seen, because both goalies have had a chance to get the number 1 role, and none of them have thrived with it. So we will see. As I said, that's really going to make or break them. I think whenever the playoff run ends, it's probably going to be due to their goaltending. I just don't know when.
We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Moving to you, Joey. I mentioned Bobrovsky there. He's coming to his own now. Not, I guess, rebounded is the word. From that, signing that huge contract and then not having a good season, and then kind of bounces back to closer to what he should be, and an all-star goaltender. They got Spencer Knight back there as well as an option, but I'm sure Bobrovsky will be the starter. What do you think his chances in the playoffs? I mean, he's been kind of good in the past in the playoffs before, but what do you think he could do in this series?
I kind of feel the same way about Bobrovsky as Ted feels about Vanecek and Samsonov. He has had a lot of instances where he'll just fall apart. He did kind of sell it down near the end of the season, and I think he still has last year's playoffs and still fresh in his mind. I think he can still come in and give a decent performance now that his defense is going to be fully healthy, and of course, if you have the offense scoring 4 or 5 goals a game, do you really have to worry? I mean,
yeah. No,
I think he understands the assignment this time around. But at the same time, I do believe Andrew Brunette is going to give him a short leash. Spencer Knight has also come into his own. He actually did win Rookie of the Month of April, so that says a lot. So he does have someone to go back to as reliance. But as you said, I think they're going to go with Bobrovsky for the starter. But like I said before, very, very short leash.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have. We've seen rookies do it in the playoffs before after a veteran starts. So you never know. Knight could come into play as the series goes or as the playoffs go on. Let's finish with this, an X factor for each team. I always call this the Fernando Pisani, a player that just never does much in the regular season, but at least that one year he scored like 14 goals on their way to the Stanley Cup final. So is there anyone, let's start with you, Ted, for Washington, that could potentially just come out of nowhere and be a factor in this series?
I think Anthony Mantha is probably Washington's, because he's one of those guys who he's either invisible at times, but he can be when he gets hot, he can really score a bunch of goals. We've seen when he first came back from injury, in a nice run, he's kind of cooled off, but he's kind of that guy, a depth scorer, particularly on the power play in a series where goals are going to, you're going to want to get a lot of goals. A guy like him will really be a guy, if he's going, it'll really help Washington, because obviously I think Ovechkin will get his goals. I think Oshie will get some. I think Kuznetsov, he's another guy. He should have a good series, although he's another one who you may not see his name at all for a couple games, or he could dominate the series, like he did back in 2018. But I think Mantha is a guy they need to get going, and if he's going, the Caps are going to have a decent shot again, provided the goaltending holds up.
That's right. For sure.
Big series for Washington.
Yeah, big question there. Joey, same question. X factor for the Panthers that could potentially turn the tide in this series, and admittedly, a team full of stars.
I think it's going to be Sam Bennett, because he's always been the playoff type performer. He wasn't that great in the regular season during his time in Calgary. Granted, this season he's been much better, but he's always been the playoff type performer. It's been his play style. He's willing to play hard. He's willing to get physical. And he's willing to get dirty. He had a point in the last playoff series he played against Tampa. He had a point in every single game he played, of course, other than the one he got suspended for. We're not going to talk about that too much. But I honestly think it's going to be Sam Bennett. He's going to be on a line potentially with Huberdeau and Giroux, and he's really good in getting in the zone. He's willing to feed one of his guys, and he's willing to stay in front of the net and not get pushed around a lot. So he's probably going to net a few goals and potentially push the Panthers to win the series.
Yeah, two great picks there. We'll see how that all shakes out. And so let's finish this with this question. Ted, we'll start with you. Washington Capitals will win this series
if the goaltending, they at least get some decent showings from their goaltending. They get guys like Ovechkin, Mantha, Oshie, and the power play going, and just kind of, they've been a very successful team on the road. They're the league's best road team, and they're the worst team in the playoffs at home. So they have to take advantage. I mean, it's just they're a strange team. But if they can keep up playing a solid game on the road, kind of carry that back home, and at least translate some of those, they have a real shot. But as I said, this is all going to depend on either Vanecek or Samsonov, because I think if they don't get the goaltending, this team will be gone very quickly.
Goaltending is massive in any playoff series. So yes, definitely. Joey, Florida Panthers will win this series if
they continue the success that they've been having all season long offensively, if they're willing to settle down defensively and not take stupid penalties. Like I said, they are 16th in the penalty kill, and if they remember from last series, that completely curb stomped them last year.
Yeah.
And the goaltending can settle down and return to the form it's supposed to form. Get Sergei Bobrovsky when he was a Vezina Trophy winner, of course, and that's how they win.
For sure. So yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out in the series, and it's gonna be fun. So let's do our final predictions for this series. Ted, what's your prediction? How's the series going to end, and who's going to score the series winning goal?
I'll say Panthers in 6. I think the Caps will give them a good series. Again, I don't have a whole lot of faith in their goaltending. And I think someone like Barkov, it'll be a very entertaining series, I think.
Oh yeah.
Washington has played some very low 2-1 game type of series, so it'll be a lot of fun, I think. But like I said, unless the goaltending is better than I expect it to be, I think Florida is just too loaded right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be not a sweep, but I think they'll be around 5 or 6. Joey, what do you think? What is this series going to end at?
Gotta agree with Ted. I think it's going to be Panthers in 6. It's like Ted said. I think it's going to be the offensive power is going to be a lot for Vanecek and the defense to settle down a little bit. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of a storybook on this. I think the game series winning goal will be by Claude Giroux. He's had to deal with Washington his whole career. What a way to just, stomp on him, right?
What a story that would be for sure. Giroux's he went there to potentially win a cup. So he's going to be motivated. I'm going to say he's going to probably be a good player in this series. Oh, thanks guys for coming on, setting up this series for our viewers and fans, for both these teams. So thanks for coming on. You can catch Ted and Joey's writing on thehockeywriters.com. They write almost every day, so definitely check out their articles as the series goes along. I'm sure they're going to be wall-to-wall coverage of it as the series goes. So definitely check that out, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this video. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on another series preview.